I think a lot of the confusion has come about due to the way Zionism was presented, especially amongst the evangelical congregations and a lot of the prophetic ministries, and a lot of these ideologies that you're talking about and things that have been taught. um, it's caused a lot of harm.
Well, right. I mean, we read from we glean things from perspectives that we've grown up with, from what's been fed to us, and a lot of things that we have just absorbed as being or taking for granted as being is what it is. But these are things taught. These are things curated for presentation by the way we want to preserve our history and understanding. The narrative is important, and everyone knows that when you control the narrative of anything, history, um, whether it's scientific, whatever it might be, discoveries, whatever it is, there's a narrative that goes along with it, and how it's presented and processed among people is important. So here, we talk about even the term Zion, where it came from, and the fact that, it has evolved. It was basically what it boils down to now is that it's the place where God dwells. That's the thing we really need to focus on as far as the deeper meaning of what Zion is. But Zionism as an ideology was a political ideology. It didn't really come so much from those areas of faith and Judaism. It evolved because people were coming out during a time of tumult and the pogroms and all the things happening in Eastern Europe and beyond, and in Europe itself. These things evolved. People took the reins that wanted to make a change or to make a name or to make an established place. They wanted to take the reins to create a new Jew, a new place, a new thing altogether, so that there would be a Western styled nation, a Western style way of living. So this really was part and parcel with how the ideology evolved from being a religious yearning to live in your home, your ancient ancestral homeland, to a political ideology of making it happen. As Rashi said, talks about taking it by force as a wall, coming in and flooding the land. And this is what happened. This is actually how it did end up occurring. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's interesting because, so many times I know I was taught a long time ago that famous author went there. The land was desolate. There was nothing there before the Jews arrived. But then we read from different rabbis and Jewish authors way before 1948 that are talking about the Arabs are there, the land is cultivated, they are working in the fields, and there are Christians there. There is a people there who are not going to want to leave. And so I think, you know, when you're taught a certain theology or ideology, the land will be surrounded, everyone will hate them, and then Yeshua will come in the clouds, right? I mean, that's what I was taught.
as human beings, we tend to mythologize what we understand and cement it into our thinking, as being only this way that we've learned, the way that we've come about to understand it. And hopefully, people are going to be curious enough to want to keep evolving and keep going back to trying to ask the right kinds of questions to inspire growth, learning more about this, getting to the history and people of that have come through history that have recorded some of these things and how it's influenced us and how we've developed our thinking. as people of faith, or even as people apart from faith. And there are many people, Jews included, who do not even reflect any part of actually following Judaism as a religion or faith. To them, it's a culture, it's a way of life, it's tradition, something that they grew up with and identify with. It's they've curated an identity through the culture of Judaism, and it's now become confusing for a lot of people to be able to separate who is a Jew, what is Israel, how did this come to be, what is Zionism, what does it stand for, and we know there's a lot of iterations of Zionism, a lot of anti-Semitic terms have now been wrapped around everyday life that has to do with politics and just the criticism of governments, which again, this is not one of the same. This is not the same thing at all. But it's been conflated to the point of it's brought dangerous situations into our reality here.
It has brought dangerous situations and a whole lot of death and destruction. And I know when I started looking at, you know, when the Jews lost the second temple and the Romans came in and Titus and destruction and exile and what have you, um, Yeshua warns them. He says, not one stone will be left upon another. And I'm not really sure, you know, when we read the first exile, he says that in 70 years, I know the plans I have for you. I have plans to give you a hope and a future. And he says, in 70 years, I will bring you back to this land. Well, now, Yeshua never says anything about that. Um, we know that the Holocaust and everything was so horrific. The trauma, countries, nations not taking them, everything that evolved to where we are at right now. And we get that and we understand that. I think there was also the Palestinians that were already on the land, along with Jews, along with Christians, along with Jews who were forced to become Muslims, but were still, I mean, there's just so much there with that land.
Well,
And
yeah, empire keeps marching on here. There's really nothing new under the sun. People have, since the inception of the first city, have advanced on building themselves empires. And it's been one march after the other. And there's nothing really new about how any nation states have been formed over over human history. It's been this marching on of colonialism and taking the land by force and subjugating the people that are on it to acquire the wealth and resources of the land that they want. And it's been the way of uh, expansion in the world seems forever. But we have to
yeah,
examine how this is for, in terms of how we stand in faith before the Lord and the purpose of our being here and how we're supposed to walk and be in the world. And both Jews and Christians and all people of all other faiths have a foundation of love and safety and well-being, and is we all seek and go after, and we claim to be it's our ultimate goal is to love one another well and to be of service to one another, to be good stewards of the gifts that we have here on the earth. But human nature has been rough. We're a rough and tumble lot.
when people start studying the history of the Jews taking the land, they took it by force. And you can read documents from Israel on the rape, the raping of women, the cruelty, the things that happen that are horrific. And, one of the things I have found for me personally in my own life is Um, I am concerned and I have been very grieved over Gaza. I believe that uh, my king, Yeshua, the one I try to follow, he was the one who was not afraid to minister to a Samaritan woman who the Jews hated. He was not afraid to heal lepers. He was not afraid to have precarious or women who were considered loose women wash his feet in front of the elite. He was not afraid to take a boat ride where people were oppressed and possessed and set them free. And so I find that when people who follow Yeshua refer to other people as cancerous or Amalek or uh, they just need cut off and removed from the land. I often am so grieved inside, Merri, because I feel like for God so loved the world, the cosmos. Let the little children come unto me. When I see the little children over there with missing arms and legs and orphaned and raggedy tents and everything that is going on, I am so grieved. And I know that, yes, there's always been wars. There's always been rumors of wars. That's not a statement that's new to us. But at some point, I feel like um, the cry has not gone forth. And some people are even scared to even speak that they have grief over Gaza. I was called a Jew hater over my grief over a people. And I am married to a man whose grandfather um, survived the Holocaust. So I'm definitely not a Jew hater. But I think this is where these terms get thrown out there, and we need to realize that it's okay to say or state, I don't like the way Netanyahu is what he's doing.
Well, whenever we are confronted with what we see as exalting itself against the love and purposes of God and harming one another, then as people of faith, particularly if you claim Yeshua as your Lord, you want to walk in the ways of love as he demonstrated. We walk after the King who came to demonstrate in flesh how we are to walk out love on the earth. And it compromise. We are called to account in our days as believers to stand in the full gospel testimony. And how are we failing Israel, Israelis, Jews? How are we failing them by not holding each one of ourselves first in the mirror, but then to hold as an Ezra Kenegdo, as a mirror image, to press against one another, to hold each other accountable to righteousness, for righteousness' sake. And God has called us for a purpose, is to love one another as he's loved us. So if we're failing in that, not bringing forth the full gospel and how we live out our lives, then we're not being the true witness and testimony he's called us to be in this age. And the reason we see these things being focused on that part of the world right now is because he needs us to focus on love, on what love is. So initially, Zionism was an idea, a political project that took advantage of the historical context of hardships faced by people practicing their form of Judaism around the world. The proponents and founders of the Zionist project employed political intrigue, manipulative tactics against the existing indigenous and current populations through acts of terrorism, displacement, expulsion, and ultimately military force. In other words, they use the same means as all nations do when they march through history and take the land. Over 750,000 Palestinians were displaced during 1948 and prior. and thousands were killed. And these events, referred to as the Nakba, remain a central trauma for Palestinians today, just as the Holocaust is for the Jewish people. Trauma is trauma, and we've all experienced a world of it.